Episode 1. Your Fate is Not Good. Oakburn City in the Holy Star Kingdom was an extremely bustling city crowded with people and vehicles during the daytime. At night, people were singing and dancing in celebration of peace with lights on and wine in their hands. In addition, the location of the Oakburn City was relatively close to the imperial capital, making the city even more prosperous. Spring was coming soon, and everything was coming back to life. But Oakburn City welcomed the last heavy snow before the beginning of spring. The snowflakes flying around the sky were like pure white feathers, swirling in every corner of the city. The city was covered with snow. The blow of the biting wind was like the howl of ghosts, and it was like a knife scraping against one's face. In the windy and snowy night, the street was empty and unusually quiet. However, at that very moment, a battered figure was slowly crawling upon the ground. The man was crawling on the ground with all his limbs, and his body was also on the ground. There were strips of marks stuck in the deep snow behind the man. The pure white snow was dyed a dazzling color by the dark red blood. It was a 15 or 16 years old boy with a handsome face. He was handsome, and he had a vigorous body. There was endless fury and hatred in his pitch-black eyes. It was a type of anger that came from the soul. In other words, he was born to be full of hatred. The youth's face was as white as the color of a paper, and his teeth were tightly biting his lips. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth. Before the blood was dripping to the snowy ground, it had already turned into red crystals. More than half of his meridians and bones had been broken, and even the tendons in his arms and legs had been torn off. What kind of hatred was this? Who was it to give rise to such serious injury? David! Suddenly, a clear voice filled with anxiety and panic, mixed with the cold wind, brushed over. Then, a charming and gentle figure directly pounced in front of the youth. It was a 14 or 15-year-old girl with red lips, white teeth, snow-white skin, and a pair of big eyes filled with tears as she looked at the heavily injured youth in front of her. "David, what happened to you?" "Damn bastard, Lucas. Aaron will definitely not let him off." Seeing the girl's anxious and furious expression, the youth's lips moved slightly as a complicated look appeared in his eyes. The young man's name was David, one of the 4 great geniuses of Young Sect College. The Young Sect was the largest youth college of Oakburn City. The Youth College was a place which taught the younger generation of the 20-year-old the enlightenment of martial arts. When at a certain age, the students of the Youth College would participate in the examination and would be promoted into the high-class martial mansion. And then the students would truly embark on the path of the martial arts from then on. In another 3 months, David would be participating in the high-class martial mansion examination. It was reported that one of the high-class martial mansions who came to Oakburn City to recruit students was also one of the 5 famous high-class colleges in the imperial capital, Wintervale Martial Mansion. As one of the Young Sect's 4 geniuses, David should have no difficulty whatsoever in taking part in the Wintervale Martial Mansion. But unexpectedly, the unpredictable event actually happened to David without any warning. In the evening, David was about to go back and rest after he finished his essentials, just like usual. However, at this time, he received a letter. The letter told him to head to the Maple Pavilion in the south of the college. Seeing the familiar handwriting, David did not think it over and directly headed over. However, when he arrived at Maple Pavilion, the person he saw was not the person in the letter, but another young girl with a delicate appearance. Before David could inquire about the reason, the delicate girl had torn off her own clothes and hugged David as she shouted for help. David was taken off guard and did not have time to argue. A group of people then appeared, and the person leading this group of people was no one else but the young master of the West family, Lucas, who was one of the 4 great geniuses of the Young Sect. Looking at Lucas's complacent smile, the delicate girl who was crying so hard, and the furious gazes from the surroundings, David understood that he had been framed. This was an extremely inferior but simple trick. But with the existence of human testimony and material evidence, David was unable to prove himself innocent. It was not long before even more brutal blows came one after another. The head of the four great geniuses, Lucas, attacked David without a second word. Lucas had the cultivation of the 7th stage of the vein opening stage, but David only had the cultivation of the 6th stage. In addition, the former possessed the boundary of blood lineage of the lion force and the martial body. Furthermore, David's mind was in a mess due to the trap, and he was soon defeated. Then, 9 of his main martial veins were shattered, and the tendons in his arms and legs were cut off. It was definitely a devastating and inhuman blow for a vigorous genius. Later, Lucas became famous and was praised by everyone in Oakburn City. However, David was expelled by Young Sect College, and he endured a tribulation that was even more painful than death. David, don't worry, I will definitely cure you. The Castillo family has many panaceas. Erin's tears kept flowing in her eyes as she tried to help David get up. However, David, whose tendons had all been crippled, was unable to get up. Erin was already on the verge of tears and immediately shouted in his direction, "Sis, David is over here. Hurry up and come over." The sound of footsteps on the snow could be heard from afar. A young and beautiful girl was walking towards them. The young girl wore a white mink fur coat. Her long black hair and exquisite face exuded noble aura. Behind her followed 4 or 5 guards with fierceness. "Sister, please help David." Erin's eyes lit up. The young girl with the noble temperament sighed lightly, and then took out an exquisite bottle. "Give this to him to eat. It can alleviate pain." "Okay." Erin immediately took the small bottle and poured out a few round and brown pills from inside and placed them near David's mouth. "David, please eat it." However, David ignored Erin with his pair of deep eyes, which were full of iciness, staring straight at the young lady with noble temperament. Erin was shocked by David's appearance. In her memories, David had never given her sister such a look before. The lady with the noble temperament looked at him indifferently and said calmly, "David, I know that you were just confused, and I hope that you can change and be a good person." After she said this, Erin actually looked at her with disbelief. "Sis, how can you say something like that? You know what kind of person David is. He wouldn't do that kind of thing. The person he likes has always been you." "The person he likes has always been you." The noble young girl's expression was still as indifferent as before. "These are no longer important." "How interesting," David suddenly laughed, but it was a sneer filled with disdain. His lips moved slightly, and his voice became as cold as knives. "Miss Jocelyn, you have also contributed to plotting me a frame-up." "How is this possible?" Erin couldn't help but blurt out. "David, it must be a misunderstanding. My sister will never hurt you. You've got to believe her." David's eyes were still cold and were sharp like icicles hanging from the eaves. "Miss Jocelyn, the letter that invited me to the Maple Pavilion was written by you." "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. David, there must be something wrong. Someone must have pretended to be Jocelyn to write to you." Erin was so anxious that she couldn't stop crying. At Young Sect College, the person she relied on most was her elder sister, and the person she worshipped most was David. In Erin's heart, she had already treated David as her future brother-in-law. However, the present situation made her feel so fearful. David's scarlet and cold eyes were staring strictly at Jocelyn's beautiful face. It was absolutely rage that appeared in his eyes. "I believe the letter was forged by someone else. But when Lucas and the others framed me in the Maple Pavilion, the fragrance of the lavender pouch you were wearing showed you were there, even if your body was hidden. You hid in the dark and watched as my meridians were torn off by Lucas. How dare you say that you had nothing to do with this?" David almost shouted it out, and it was just like a beast's roar. Aaron, who was beside David, was completely terrified and powerlessly prostrated herself on the cold, snowy ground. Jocelyn's eyes flashed with a trace of faint emotions, but she quickly recovered calm. When she looked at David again, there was a hint of a pitiful look in her eyes. This pitiful look was just like a superior monarch and a noble looking at a beggar at the side of the road. And this kind of gaze was more like a sharp blade piercing into David's heart. How he wished to hear Jocelyn defend for herself and explain that it was all Lucas's conspiracy, that she did not participate in it, and that David had misunderstood her. However, Jocelyn did not defend. She didn't need to explain, because it was unnecessary. She was the princess of the Castillo family, and was also one of the 4 great geniuses of the young sect. For Jocelyn, David now had no difference from a beggar in the eyes of a noble. With such a huge gap between the two, why did she have to explain? On account of the friendship that we've had in the past, I will send someone to notify someone in the general's mansion to pick you up. Jocelyn's indifferent tone was filled with pride. David gritted his teeth as they made gurgling sounds. His throat rolled as he coldly spat out the words, "Get out. Behave yourself." Jocelyn frowned. She turned around and left without any care. Aaron, who was beside David, immediately shouted out in panic, "No, sister, we can't leave David alone. He will die." "Miss Aaron, I will immediately inform someone in the general's mansion to come and find him. You don't have to worry." Without waiting for Aaron to finish speaking, the 2 guards took her away forcefully. Before leaving, one of the guards looked at David with contempt. Do you think you're still one of the 4 great geniuses of Young Sect College? How dare you slander our princess as you are already a crippled man?" The guard spat on the ground before turning around and leaving with disdain. Jocelyn and her team quickly disappeared into the night, and the sounds of Aaron's crying also gradually disappeared. David's eyes became sharper and sharper. When close to the gate of the Castillo family, Jocelyn suddenly slowed down and indicated the guards to bring Aaron in first. When Jocelyn was the only one left, a young figure appeared not far behind her. "Congratulations to Miss Jocelyn on getting rid of that cripple." The frivolous laughter made Jocelyn unconsciously frown. "Lucas, do you come to talk like an unconcerned person?" This young man was no one else other than the #1 genius of the young sect, Lucas. He had a slender figure and was vigorous. The valiant brows were full of arrogance and haughtiness. "Whoopee, Miss Jocelyn. I have fixed David up for you. Have you considered rewarding me?" "I didn't ask you to cripple his cultivation," Jocelyn said in a cold tone. "But you didn't stop me, which means you don't object me to do so." Lucas's face revealed a playful smile. Jocelyn's eyes turned cold. She turned around and left without saying any words. Immediately, Lucas said once again, "I came to tell you that the grand ceremony of the Wintervale Marshall Mansion examination will be held in 3 months at your birthday banquet. Are you satisfied now?" Jocelyn's footsteps paused for a while, and the complexion on her face also eased a lot. Then she went back home alone. "Whoopee!" Lucas laughed complacently, and then with a movement of his body, he disappeared into the night. More and more snow fell, and the cold wind was chilling people to the bone. It was still that street and that youth. However, the mark behind him had already been buried by the thick snow. David's speed of his movement became slower and slower, and the temperature of his body became lower and lower. That handsome face had turned green. His body, which was originally in pain, had become numb. He couldn't feel anything at all. Suddenly, a slender figure walked over in front of David. David raised his head, and what entered his eyes was the gentle face of a middle-aged man. It was an unfamiliar face. The man's appearance could not be considered handsome, but his appearance made people feel extremely comfortable. He looked especially pleasing to the eye. A calm and elegant temperament was emitted from his face. The man's gaze was as calm as water as he looked at the youth in front of him. His lips moved slightly as he spat out a few words. "You are ill-fated," the man spoke. It sounded like that there were not any emotions, as if he was just speaking casually. David's lips trembled slightly, but he didn't pay attention to him, nor did he ask for help. He just crawled stubbornly with his crippled body. The exhausted David felt as if his body weighed 10,000 kilograms. After only crawling for 2 meters, he fell to the ground due to exhaustion. David reversed his body in difficulty and allowed the ice-cold snowflakes to fall on his face. As he felt his consciousness fade, David slowly closed his eyes. "Lucas, if I do not die today, I will definitely make your whole family suffer a lot in the future," David uttered, before losing consciousness.